Hi, hello, welcome or welcome back. I'm Tally, and today we're going to go through a January roundup. So, January, I had a really good reading month, I had a good movie month, I just had a good consuming media month all round. So, let's talk about it. So, in January, I read 18 books, and my average rating was 4.31 stars, which I really am enjoying the sound of that. This year, I've decided not to use I've done years where I just didn't rate anything unless it was like spectacular. I've done years where I used spreadsheets that people kindly make and put in what you give it for character, setting, etc., and it gives you a star rating. This year, I decided to just go with my gut, and this is where we've ended up. It's all part of me trying to streamline my tracking progress for everything, because tracking process for everything, because I always start off the year trying to do too much and then I fall off, and then yeah. So this year, part of that is I'm just going to try and go with my gut on my ratings. And it turned out I've had a really good year so far. So let's go through them. We'll do them low to high of what I rated them. So the first book we're going to discuss is a book I gave a 1.5 star, unfortunately, and that was Coup de Grace by Sophia Aram. So this is a novella. It's a kind of I just saw my cat try and catch a bird. He was very close. This is like a literary horror, and it has so many elements that on paper work for me, but just not on this paper. So we follow Vikram, who is struggling immensely with his depression, and he is actually, when we join him, he is on his way to commit suicide. He has decided he is going to go to this beach in, is it Montreal? I believe it's Montreal, and he is going to fill his pockets with stones and walk out and not return. However, when he gets off the train at the station he needs to go to, he finds that the corridors are like never ending, and then he can't find his way back to the station. So it's like the back rooms, if you know what that is. And he has a lot of time to grapple with the fact that he was ready to take his own life. He's like thinking about things from his past, and it didn't do what I wanted it to do. Basically, I don't know what I wanted it to do. I wanted it to be more, I don't know, but it just wasn't what I wanted, which is a shame. The writing was very beautiful, very lyrical, so I would definitely pick up more by this author in the future. This is their debut, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do in the future. Unfortunately, this was just a miss for me at this time. I gave 3 stars to An Academy for Liars by Alexis Henderson. This is another book that had all the components that I should love, and for some reason it just didn't hit those heights that I expected. I mean, I gave it 3 stars. You know, it's not a bad rating. It just wasn't what I expected. I went into it genuinely believing I was looking at a high 4.5 star, and it just didn't get there. So this follows Lennon, whose life is kind of falling apart, and then she gets a mysterious phone call which tells her she has a interview for a place at this prestigious secret school. It's like a kind of magic school, and she gets a place in the school and then starts learning about this ability to like persuade people to do what you want. So it's like mind control. And she goes, attends this school with some other students, and it's very like boarding school. They can't really have much interaction with the outside world, and they start learning how to use this power, and start questioning whether they're using it for good or bad, etc. And then a murder happens, or a death happens, and Lennon is quite convinced it's a murder, and she very much like doesn't know who to trust. Can she trust the very, very, very handsome teacher that is her, what's the word I'm looking for, her advisor, who she's having feelings for, and he is clearly grappling with feelings for her. And so much about this was perfect on paper, but for some reason I just didn't get there. And I think the biggest issue I had was that I just didn't care for the main character, and that is a big part of a book's enjoyment for me. I don't have to like the main character, but I need to have a feeling for the main character. And unfortunately, for me, the main character was just bland. When things were happening to her, I kind of didn't care. And when we got to like the last section of the book, like the big battle type scenario, you know, the epic ending, it didn't feel epic, and it didn't feel like her and her friends were actually in danger at any point. And yeah, I feel like I spent the whole book waiting for it to start, and because I was waiting, I missed what was happening. Like I let the book pass me by because I was waiting for more, which is a shame. I think like the writing style was quite good, so I think I will still. This was the first Alexis Henderson book I've read, and I've heard so many good things about The Year of the Witching, so I think I'll still give that a try because I enjoyed the writing style. It was just unfortunately this book didn't quite capture me, so I'm not writing this author off. I'm gonna pick up another one by them and see what I think. But this was a 3-star, which isn't a negative. It was just kind of bland. I didn't have a lot of feelings either way, which isn't a bad place to be, but it wasn't what I wanted. I read The Betrayals by Bridget Collins, and this was a 3.5-star read for me. This is like a historical with a touch of fantasy kind of novel, and we follow 2 different characters who have a past, but not really. So let me start that again. So we follow Claire, who is the grandeur at this elite musical boarding school in this world where, I don't know, there's like, you write music and the notes are, they refer to it as a game, and the notes are like slightly magical or something along those lines. I didn't quite pick it up. It makes sense in the context of the story, but I'm really struggling to explain it. But yeah, so she is the first female that has been hired at this Mount Verse school, and I think there was some sort of mix up and they didn't realise that she was a female when they hired her, otherwise they would not have hired her. And we also follow Leo, who is a former student of the school, and he is currently a bit of a disgraced politician. His party have kicked him out because they are putting in all of these purity laws, and Leo does not agree with how far they're going with their purity laws, and so they kind of kick him out and banish him back to this school where he used to go as a bit of a punishment to remain out of the eyes of like the media and stuff. So he goes to this school. He starts thinking about his best friend when he was at this school. They started off as like academic rivals, and then they were forced to work on a project together, and then they became very close and became best friends. I can't remember the name of his friend now, but we know that he has died at some point. It's quite heavily implied it was a suicide, and Leo seems to still be holding that. He seems to be holding some sort of grief and regret and perhaps even blame over the suicide. So we do some flashbacks with Leo to when he was at the school studying, and then we also follow Claire now. So Claire knows who Leo is immediately, and we don't find out for a while, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler, that she is actually the sister of the boy that killed himself. So she has access to diaries from her brother and Leo when they were at school, and she blames Leo for his death. They strike up like a bit of an unlikely friendship, and yeah, it was a very interesting book. It's very Bridget Collins-esque. I read The Binding by her and I absolutely loved that. That was a 5-star book for me. This, not so much. It was really enjoyable. I really liked the concept and the idea of it, and it had Bridget Collins' signature writing style. So if you are a fan of any of Bridget Collins' previous books, you will probably quite enjoy this as well. So if we move on to the book, I gave 3.75 stars. So that is The Haunting Between Us by Paul Michael Winters. This is a queer YA horror, and this follows Cameron and Hugo, and their kind of blossoming relationship, and it's alongside them dealing with a haunting of Hugo's house. So Cameron has grown up in this small town. He has been out since he was like 12. He's 16 now, and he lives next to a decrepit house that no one's lived in his whole life, and it is known to be haunted. And then one day a young boy and his dad move into the house, who is Hugo is the boy, and Hugo starts to experience the haunting of the house as well, and the ghosts, etc. And Hugo and Cameron strike up a friendship. Hugo's dad is a house flipper, so Hugo never spends more than like 6 months in a place. He struggles to maintain friends. He's never been able to really date anyone, so he's never had a need to come out to his dad. And to begin with, he's a bit wary about making friends with Cameron and Cameron's core group of friends, because he thinks we're going to move so soon. But then this house turns out to be in a lot of need of repair. So his dad says, hey, we're probably going to be here for at least 1.5 years, so you will probably finish your senior year here. So Hugo feels a bit more comfortable in making friendships, and him and Cameron find themselves kind of drawn to one another, and they fall in love amidst their group of friends, like the Scooby Gang, trying to deal with this haunting. Obviously it has the issues, not issues, but it has to come up with reasons for the adults to not be involved. I think this is the author's second book, and there were some elements where the dialogue was really kind of stilted and didn't feel very realistic or didn't flow very naturally. So I think another go around with an editor might have fixed that up, but I do see the potential that this author has, and I will pick up their next book. They have another one slotted in for the end of 2025, and I'll definitely pick that up because I think the author has a lot of potential, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do. Now for a couple of 4 stars. The first book I actually read this year, and it was a 4-star, is Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. So this is my first book by this author, and I will definitely pick up more. I have a few of his other books on my shelves that I want to pick up. So this follows Noah, whose parents get pulled into a like an alt-right cult, which draws people in via things such as Fax News, which is obviously a nod to a certain American news channel. It's a signed copy, so I need to stick my signed copy in. I got this copy from the Abominable Book Box. Noah goes back to check in on his family because they're talking about the day of, is it the Great the Great Reckoning, which is due to happen, and he loses, his parents stop answering his calls like leading up to that, so he decides to go check in on them. This is a few days before Christmas. He drives across country to go check in on them, and then his parents, in particularly his mum, brutally attack him, and then it all kind of falls apart from there. And then we flip to Noah's brother and Noah's brother's family, so his wife, their 2 children, at the beginning of November, and how they fall prey to this pipeline as well, leading up to the events of when we join Noah at the beginning. It is very, obviously it's very on the nose for what is happening in American politics, and I say this as an outsider. I am in the UK. I have done a full review on this on a previous video, so I will link that for you to go and check it out. But I would say 4 stars, and I look forward to reading from this author again in the future. My other 4-star read for the month was Evocation by S.T. Gibson. This is a fantasy romance, and we follow married couple Rhys and Moira, who are both magic users in their own way. So Moira is a witch, it's a lineage thing, and she does a lot of kind of helpful magic for people. And then Rhys is a magician who has learnt it through trial and error, like learnt the magic, and he belongs to a kind of secret society that is very, well, they only invite men in. They're quite sexist and quite traditional in how they run. And when we join them, it's been 6 months since Rhys has had a huge falling out with his ex-boyfriend and best friend David, and we don't really learn much about it. That's actually explored in a prequel novella, which I have actually read. I read before reading Evocation, and that's called Odd Spirits off the top of my head. David's dad has died, and his dad was very, very like wealthy and powerful and well known in the magical community, and he actually basically groomed David from a very young age to carry on the family name. And when he died, unbeknownst to David, he actually passed on a possession spirit to David, and David is just finding out about it, and he has to approach Moira and Rhys to help him deal with this demon that's latched itself onto him, because as he finds out, he has until his 30th birthday to get rid of this demon, or I don't know what will happen, I can't remember, or he loses his soul or something, and David is just a few months away from turning 30. Like the romance undercurrent of David and Rhys, with their bubbling feelings that they still have for each other, they clearly still have a lot of love for one another, and Rhys really grapples with it because he loves his wife Moira, and then David and Moira sort of become closer as they all work together to try and deal with this demon, and they kind of discover a bit of a platonic love. Yeah, I thought it was really enjoyable. Actually, I really enjoyed the characters. Did I want it to be the three of them having a menage a trois? Yes, I did, but I can accept I can accept it for what it was. There is going to be a second book. I believe it comes out this year, and I will definitely check it out. My 4.25 read of the month was The Baby Dragon Cafe by A.T. Qureshi. So this is the first in a fantasy romance series. It's very much in the vein of the Pumpkin Spice Cafe meets dragons, and it was just really fun. I'm not gonna lie, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. We follow Saphira, who has opened up a baby dragon cafe, and a lot of people don't allow baby dragons into their establishments because baby dragons can't really control themselves yet, so they set fire to stuff and they're very destructive, and it just costs the proprietors a lot of money. But Saphira's always dreamt of being able to have baby dragons in her cafe. She is not part of like a wealthy old named family, so she doesn't have any dragons of her own, and she will not have any dragons of her own. It's quite like hierarchical in that way, but this gives her the opportunity to be close to them. And then one day she meets Aiden. Aiden is the son of a very wealthy, well-known family who has a baby dragon. He does not really care for her, like he doesn't really want to have a baby dragon, but he was left a dragon egg by his brother when his brother unfortunately passed, and so he feels that he should keep the dragon in memory of his brother. And he bumps into Saphira, and Saphira and his little dragon Sparky get along quite well, so he hires Saphira to train his dragon. And Saphira jumps at chance because A, she gets to be around a cute baby dragon, and B, it's some extra money to help her replace all of the things that keep getting destroyed by the baby dragons in her cafe. And she is very sunshine and warm, and Aiden is very closed off and introvert, and romance blossoms, and I loved it. I loved the characters. I really enjoyed the things they had to go through. This didn't have like that third act breakup or third act drama that you often get with romance books, and I usually don't really appreciate that so much. And there's 2 more books at the moment that are slated to come out in this series, and they're going to follow other couples in the same town, and I am very, very excited. It's basically like it's the Pumpkin Spice Cafe, is that what it's called? You know, the Dream Harbor series, but with dragons, and I loved it. My 4.5 read for the month was The Teller of Small Fortunes by Julie Leong. So this is a very cute fantasy. It's very cozy fantasy, I would say. It's very cute, and we follow a wandering fortune teller who is Tao, who is on the run from her family. She is a immigrant, and she has magic. She's able to do like these fortunes and see into the future, but she refuses to use it. And when we meet her, we know that she is on the run from her family, presumably to hide this magic. So she has a traveling little caravan that she takes around, and she does very small fortunes. She'll only do small ones, she won't do big ones. And she happens to meet these 2 traveler, they're like, what are they, they're soldiers. Yeah, she meets a ex-soldier and a reformed thief who are on a quest of their own. The soldier's daughter was kidnapped, and they were on the quest to find her, and then they end up joining together to travel together, kind of against Tao's wishes, but that's what ends up happening. And then they get joined by another person along the way, someone who wants to head out and become a baker, and it's just a cute little found family, and they're going on a little adventure. But the stakes are higher than you would expect with things like cozy fantasy, like Legends and Lattes and stuff like this. Low stakes. I would say these are kind of higher stakes, but they're still on the cozy fantasy spectrum. It was very, very beautifully written. I've read a lot of books this month that I would describe as beautifully written. I just seem to have done really well with picking them up. The conversations the characters had were very good, especially around like immigrant status and the judgment that people have for people they don't know. All that surrounding that was great conversations. The found family aspect was wonderful. Found family is one of my favorite things in a book. Yeah, it was just such a delight. I really enjoyed it. This was a debut for the author. I'm very excited to see what they do next. They have another book coming out this year. It seems to be another kind of cozy fantasy. I don't know if it's set in the same world, but I'm very much looking forward to picking it up when it comes out. Now we're going to get on to my 4.75 reads. I have quite a few of them. Let's get through a bit quicker. So we'll start off with Crypt of the Moon Spider by Nathan Ballingrud. So this is a horror novella. I read a few horror novellas this month, and this one was, oh, I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. So we follow Veronica. We follow Veronica in the 1930s, and she is dealing with some depression-esque feelings, and her husband sends her off to not a sanitarium, a treatment centre for the melancholy. And this centre is actually on the moon, and the doctor that runs it, Dr. Dr. Barrington, and Dr. Barrington has a interesting treatment that he has developed, and he takes a little bit of silk from spiders, these moon spiders, and he places them in a particular place in the brain, and it fixes melancholy. And Veronica gets sent off for this treatment, basically against her wishes. She's not actually told this what's going to happen. She just gets dropped off on the moon by her husband, and he's like, okay, goodbye, I'm off, and then off he goes. And this was so good, so good. And it looks as though it's the first of a trilogy, and I'm very, very much looking forward to seeing what happens next. For a novella, I had no questions. I wasn't confused. There was nothing that I personally felt was missing from the story. It hit all of the beats that it needed to and more, and it was unnerving the whole way through, and it had some scary parts, and I just really loved this. I ate this up. There were so many beautiful quotes in this as well, and I cannot wait for more. I cannot wait for more in this series. This was such a good read. I loved it. I loved it. Next is Dearest by Jackie Walters. This is a horror, and it's very much like a grief postpartum mother horror. And this was the first book I finished in January, and I can still vividly remember so much of it. And yeah, it was just really good. So I did do a review on this. I will link it. It was in the same review as the Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. We follow Flora, who is a new mother. Her baby is about 6 weeks old, I believe, and her husband is military, so he's away, and she starts to unravel due to, well, the emotional strain of raising a newborn, the sleep deprivation, the lack of like self-care, and she starts to think things are moving around in her house. She starts to wonder if she is going a little crazy or if there is something happening, and then she reaches out to her estranged mother, and her mother turns up to help her, and it kind of exacerbates the issues. And then so she starts to wonder if her mother's the one that's causing some of these issues, and it's just so good. It was so good. I really enjoy grief horror. I really appreciate grief horror and what it can do and how it helps people work through certain things. And I really appreciate horror around motherhood and the beginning stages of motherhood, and how like you and your body and everything changes, your brain chemistry changes, everything changes. And I really enjoy books that explore that, and this just did it perfectly for me. Yeah, very few notes. I really enjoyed this. I would love to see this as a film, but I don't know if they could do it justice, is my only issue. Summer of the Monsters is David Sodergren's most recent book, and this was absolutely fabulous. I've only read The Haar by him previously, which I loved, and this one was such a good experience. They're very different. I was able to be in like a Q&A with David Sodergren, and I said to him, like, is this your venture into YA horror, because it felt to me quite YA. And he said he never intends on any of these, like, like The Haar was people refer to as like romance horror, and this one I personally called a YA horror, and he said he never intends on any of this, but I just absolutely loved it. So I think this is a really good entrance horror if you are not someone who reads a lot of horror, but I think it also is fantastic for people who do read a lot of horror. So we follow Lucy, who is 16, and this is set in the 80s, and her mum has died a few years prior, and her dad is a author and he is struggling to write, and so they end up having to sell the house and all of their belongings, and they move into this house that her dad got quite cheap, and it's like isolated in this little village in Scotland. And when they arrive, the house is still full of the belongings of the family that lived there before, because they actually basically fled in the middle of the night. And there's a lot of weird stuff going on, and people talk about these monsters in the forest. And Lucy goes exploring and discovers that these rumours of the monsters in the forest are not rumours, they are real. And as she starts to learn about them, it also becomes quite a study on what makes a monster, and is it the humans that are monsters. And I just loved it. I loved Lucy. She was so believable, as a character. She made some really rubbish decisions that make sense for a 16-year-old, and the ending was really kind of heartbreaking, and this was just such a good book, and it really captured the essence of like a summer holiday kind of book. So yeah, honestly, I loved it. No notes, it was great. I have so many of David Sodergren's books to pick up and read ASAP, because I love what I've read. So why am I holding out, you know? Come on. And then my last 4.75 of the month that I'm going to talk about is At Dark I Become Loathsome by Eric LaRocca. This is his most recent release, and this is a novella. Now, Eric LaRocca is someone that I absolutely love. Some of his books don't hit as well as others, but I always find Eric LaRocca's writing to be very compulsive to me. And Eric LaRocca is quite well known for their short stories. And what I loved about this is that we have a overarching story, and then the characters share short horror stories with each other throughout. So I think it really encapsulated everything that makes Eric LaRocca's writing short and punchy and good and horrific. And the main crux of this is we follow Ash, who is a person who has basically lost everything. He lost his wife to battle with cancer, and then his son was kidnapped a few years prior to the start of this story. He has been dealing with a lot of grief, and the biggest way he's been dealing with grief is like body modifications. He's been taking out his grief on his body, and he's covered himself in piercings and things. He feels like a monster inside, and he wants his external to reflect that. And the only thing keeping him alive is the hope that one day he's going to find his son. So he's kind of grappling and battling with himself all the time over these feelings he's having. He has since discovered or like designed, I guess, this like project that he does where he helps other people learn to appreciate their life. So he buries them in a coffin for half an hour, then digs them up, and they have a new appreciation for life, and it stops a lot of people from going through with suicide. So this is what he does. He meets people online in chat rooms, and they pay him for him to bury them and then dig them back up, and they are like, oh wow, life's worth living or whatever. And it just kind of follows this devolution that happens where everything just kind of starts falling apart. And it was such a spiral to go down into with Ash. And it was dark and gory and sickening, and all of the things that you do associate with Eric LaRocca's writing, but written, all of those things written really well. I think this is a great book to add to his catalogue, and as always, I just am on tenterhooks to see what he comes up with next. Now we're going to get into my 5 stars for the month. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 6 5-stars. I start with the one I've got sitting in front of me. I read volume 2 of Adventure Time. I love Adventure Time. I'm reading the graphic novels I have, and this was just great. It was fun. The artwork is stunning and it matches the show, which I love. And yeah, I'm always in the mood for more Adventure Time, although this one did not have enough Marceline, so that was the only negative I would say. I read Bury Your Gaze by Chuck Tingle. This follows Misha. I'm trying to remember. I think this might have been included in my review that I did as well. I'm not sure. This follows Misha, who is a script writer in Hollywood, and he writes stories that feature people he wishes he'd seen on screen when he was younger, i.e. gays. And he is told that the finale he's been working towards, where the two female detectives finally admit their love for one another and kiss. He is told that that needs to be scrapped. The algorithm is saying no gays, we don't want the gays. So he is told that he even needs to rewrite it, have them be straight, or they will use, or the studio will use their AI program to re-record it and have it do what their algorithm says is going to do well in the charts. And Misha decides, no, I want these characters to be gay. So he basically ends up in a bit of a war with the studio, and then suddenly the monsters from his stories are coming to life and they're coming after him. And unfortunately, he writes some fucked up monsters, and some of them have no way of like killing them off. So yeah, it is great. It's great. Chuck Tingle's horror books, fantastic, absolutely amazing. The commentary on Hollywood and the media industry and how the gay is out and then it's in, and queer people are treated as a trend. The discussions about being in the closet, and yeah, it was also good. Honestly, there was nothing lacking in this story at all. And Chuck Tingle is just an absolute master of his craft, and I just cannot undersell this book. It was fantastic. It is getting all of the praise for a reason. Bloom by Delilah S. Dawson is this one I definitely did review, so that will be linked. This is a novella, well, it's like 200-ish pages, and we follow Ro, who has recently moved cross country following a breakup. She found her boyfriend cheating on her, and she moves cross country to take up a new job, and she's trying to live that kind of almost Pinterest life, but she's starting to feel quite lonely, and all she does is go to work and come home, and she avoids talking to her mum, and her mum's a little bit on the narcissistic side. And then as part of her I want to be that girl, she goes to a local farmer's market, and when she's there she meets Ash, and Ash is running a stall there, and Ro feels this undeniable kind of urge to talk to her. She's like a connection with Ash, and she's never had this kind of feelings for a female before, and she is very willing to explore it. Ash as a person is quite closed off. She's quite secretive. She doesn't give a lot, and Ro becomes utterly enamored and absolutely obsessed, and her obsession gets worse and worse, especially as they start dating, and she wants more. She wants to know more about Ash, and Ash is not giving it to her. So Rose starts looking herself for it, and there are some horror elements, there is some romance elements. The intimate moments between the two is absolutely perfection. And there are so many red flags between the relationship that if Ash had been a man, I would have been screaming at the book for Ro to run away. But I, like Ro, for some reason, just didn't, like, for some reason kind of just excused it. It was very weird. It made me definitely consider some things about myself alongside Ro. This was just such a great book, and there were so many points where I could have known what was happening, but I was just denying myself. So yeah, great book. The horror was good, the twists and turns really, really good. The Blue Book of Nepo by Manon Stefan Ross is it's a novella. We follow Rowena and her son Dylan, who at the time of meeting him is, I think, around 14, and they are they're living in a isolated farmhouse in Wales, and this is following some sort of incidents that happen around the world. So this is like a dystopian future. We don't know much about what the incident was. And one day Rowena gives Dylan this blue book, and he decides he wants, because he is a big fan of writing and creative writing, and he decides he wants to write about their life. But he asks Rowena if she will do chapters of the time before, and he's going to do their life now, so the time after. So we go through these like snapshots of leading up to the event that happened and what's happening now. And it is so good, so good. And as a mother, I think reading Rowena's parts where she's talking about like her son and trying to keep him alive and what she wants to teach him and what she wishes he could experience, um and then following him as he is questioning some things, and just like, I don't know, just I was imagining how I would keep my kids alive in those situations, and it just really struck a nerve. And they it's so emotional, it really is. I did tear up a lot reading it, and I just think the story was so quiet and beautiful. And sometimes it's nice, I don't know if nice is the right word, but sometimes it's nice to read about these apocalyptic settings that are not all go 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 and violence and drama and Hunger Games. And you know, sometimes you just want to read about those people that are just surviving, and there's no like zombies at the door or anything like that. It's just this quiet moment of this family trying to survive. And the Blue Becca Nepo did that for me. It was just absolutely fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. I can't believe it took me so long to read this, and I'm so pleased I read it. Speaking of books that made me emotional, I read The Haunting of Velkwood, and this is by Gwendolyn Keast, and this is a horror. Yeah, it's like a horror book. It's not heavy on the horror, it's like paranormal horror. That's what I'm going for, paranormal horror. We follow our main character Talitha, who has whose life is like kind of governed by this dark secret, in that when she was younger, she and her family lived on this street which was called Velkwood, which is actually Talitha's surname. They were one of the first families to move in, so the street was named after them. The street has about 8 houses in it, and something happened, and now the street is like not quite there but not quite gone, and only people who lived there can cross into it. So it's like this scientific marvel, and it's believed that there's ghosts. The ghosts of the families that live there are still trapped there, and Talitha is always constantly approached by reporters and people to talk about it, and researchers, and she always declines them. And one day Jack, who is a researcher, approaches her and says, hey, we really want to go in there. We've already spoken to Brett and Grace, who were 2 other girls, Talitha's friends, that escapes the place, and they've turned us down. You're our last hope. And she's like, no, I'm not doing it. She needs the money, but she doesn't want to go there. And he says, hey, we managed to get some drones in there. Do you want to see the photos? She's like, yeah, okay. And then when she's looking at the photos, she looks at the photo of her family home. She sees in the window the outline of her younger sister, and she realizes she has to go back, because if there's a chance that her sister's there and a chance that her sister's alive and she can get her back, then she needs to do it. And so she goes back there, and she crosses into the street, she's there for an hour. They're very strict, you know, an hour, here's a timer. And when she comes out, 3 months has passed. And then she tries again. She's there for an hour and mere seconds have passed. And it kind of unravels from there as she tries to find out what happened, and she shoulders a lot of blame for what happened. We have some flashbacks to her and her friends, and it is so emotionally destroying, this book. It's just absolutely killer. And oh god, I was so upset on behalf of all the characters, and they've all made poor choices, but it's all about just trying to survive and how these young girls can survive in a community that is determined to cover up the dark things that are happening. Yeah, what these girls can do to basically escape and start their own life. And yeah, it was hard. It was hard. It was good. It was very, very like one of those books you can't put down. 5 stars, absolute 5 stars. Sorry if the camera's moved. I had to go do school pickup. Right, and I just have one more book to talk about. Just one more. And my final 5-star read of the month, and the one that I would pick as my favourite of the month, is How to Become a Dark Lord and Die Trying by Django Rexler. This was such a fun book. Oh my god. So we follow Davi, who we're not quite sure how it's happened, but she is in like a D&D-esque fantasy realm, and whenever she dies she respawns back in the same place in like this little pond or whatever. And this old little guy comes over and tells her that there's this prophecy that she's gonna like slay the Dark Lord or something like that. So when she dies and respawns, all the world resets, so no one remembers anything, and she's the only one that has memory. Like, she remembers all of her previous lives. And when we join her, she's on life 289 or something like that, 278, something like that. And she's been captured and she's been tortured by the Dark Lord, and she's trying to kill herself so she can restart, and the Dark Lord's not letting her kill herself. And then when she finally is able to respawn, she decides this time around she's going to be the Dark Lord. She is had enough. She's done 200 and whatever times of trying to take out the Dark Lord. It's not gone well, and she's decided, right, I'm going to be the Dark Lord this time. So she spends a couple of lives trying to work out how to get started. She finds this group of orcs, and she's like, right, this little ragtag team of orcs, I'm going to get them on my side. So she dies a few times trying to work out the best way to get them on side. And she says there's a prophecy that she is said to be the Dark Lord and that she can see into the future. She doesn't know a lot about what happens in the Wildlands with the orcs and all of the wildlings and stuff, because she mostly kept to like the other side of the realm with like the good guys. But she does know a few things, enough to get her by pretending she can see into the future. So she needs to get across like this forest and through this mountain pass to get to the convocation where they choose who the Dark Lord is going to be. And she doesn't know how they're chosen, but she knows she's got to get there. She's got a rough timeline of when she has to be there, and she has to be there because she has to beat the person who always becomes the Dark Lord in all of the previous timelines, because that person is evil. And she decides, you know, fuck it, I'm going to be Dark Lord this time. And it is so funny, and Davi is just ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. It's really funny because she's a human and humans are hated, so she pretends she's not a human. And they have these thermites like different coloured crystal stone things, and if you swallow them it like bumps up your stats effectively. So different colours bump up different stats, and as a human she can use them to do like magic, but she has to make sure no one sees her do that, because otherwise they'll work out she's a human and kill her. And yeah, it's just her trying to like out politically maneuvering all of these different like not rebellion groups, like groups in the outskirts and stuff. she has all of these memories of like living in our world. So she has a lot of like quips to herself about, you know, D&D and Facebook and things, that no one there has any clue what she's talking about. A lot of it has like really tongue-in-cheek footnotes where she's like, say something and she's like, oh, but da, 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 da. And it's just really, really fun. It's such a fun adventure, and Davi's really fun to follow. First in the series, it ended on quite a good cliffhanger, and I was so ready for the next book, and I hope it comes out this year. This is just really, really fun. I want to read Dungeon Crawler Carl, because I have a feeling that might have a similar vibe. I don't know if it's going to be as comedic, but I think it will have a similar vibe, so I'm going to give that a try. I might also try some more books by Django Rexler. I don't think that they're going to have the same fun essence that this series does, but I will definitely give them a try. But if this sounds fun, if you enjoy D&D, if you enjoy like role-playing games, if you enjoy things like, you know, like Fable, Elder Scrolls, or this kind of vibe, I would definitely pick this up, because this was a really, really fun book, and it was perfection, absolute perfection. And I honestly, like, if someone said to me, what book shall I read from your January reads, I would recommend that to most people, to be honest. Even if you think you might not like it, I think it's worth giving it a try. And if you're not 100% sure on it and you give it a try, do a few chapters, because at the beginning, obviously, she's just killing herself a few times to go through lives, but when she gets settled into the life that she's going to do for the whole book, then you get to grips with what the book and the writing style and stuff is like, and it's a lot more fun. So yeah, they're the 18 books I read in January. Thank you for joining me today for my books that I read in January. Join me in my next video for either the other media I consumed in January, or my books I purchased, or I have books that have joined my bookshelf in January. Yeah, make sure to subscribe, and then you'll know when I upload that. And if you like this video, please like it. Please drop in the comments your top 3 reads of January, and I will see you soon, friends, with another video. Thank you for joining me today. Bye.